Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the preview for the 2022 Hungarian Grand Prix, the final race before F1 takes its annual summer break. And you know, Hungary is an odd one for me. We discussed this on Sunday in the stream, actually. This race used to feel, more often than not, like it was a little bit mediocre, if you know what I mean. But in recent seasons, it's actually thrown up some great races. I mean, growing up, I never really looked forward to Hungary, but now I cannot wait for this weekend. It's another one of those weekends as well, where it's going to be fascinating to see just how much of a difference the 2022 regulations make to the racing around a track that hasn't always been renowned for its action and close racing. So much to look forward to. And just to make it even more interesting, the weather might even spice things up a little bit as well. But anyway, let's jump straight into the preview, then kicking things off, as always, with a look at the circuit and all the usual info that follows. So last weekend, F1 was at Paul Ricard for the French Grand Prix, but now it's on to Budapest in Hungary for round 13, unlucky for some, of the season. A lap of the Hungaroring is 4.381 kilometres long, that is just over 2.7 miles if you prefer, and is made up of a total of 14 corners, and the race on Sunday is scheduled to run for 70 laps. Once again, there will be 2 DRS zones to help with overtaking, and given how tight and twisty that final section in particular is, DRS is going to be very important this weekend, as it often is, of course. The first zone runs between turns 1 and 2, with the second zone down the start-finish straight, and worth noting that both zones share the same detection point, which is just before the final turn, turn 14. The race lap record is held by Lewis Hamilton, who posted a 1:16.627 in 2020, and last year's fastest race lap was actually set by Pierre Gasly with a 1:18.394 in a chaotic and dramatic race, which saw Esteban Ocon take his first ever Grand Prix victory, leading home Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton. However, as I'm sure you'll remember, Vettel was later disqualified because the stewards were unable to extract the required 1 litre sample of fuel, which promoted Hamilton to second and Carlos Sainz to third. Now, usually at this stage, I do some dodgy segue into the Tyre Talk part of the preview, but a few people have complained saying it's getting a little bit tiresome and they don't really like it. So unfortunately, no segue this week. I mean, I say a few people, it's really only about 3 people, and interestingly enough, 3 is also the number of dry compounds available across a race weekend. Oh yes, it's Tyre Talk time, and no, I'm not going to stop. How dare I have fun with my own content? Terrible, Sean. Shocking. The compounds available for this weekend are the same as the last time out in France, and they are the hard C2, the medium C3, and the soft C4. Now, the Hungaroring is not really all that high energy, and it's a circuit where good traction is hugely important. It does also get very hot as well, so that could be a factor this weekend, in practice at least. But we have got a mixed forecast for the rest of the weekend, but more on that a little bit later. Last year's winning strategy wasn't a straightforward one, as we had a tyre change under the early red flag, and everyone except Lewis Hamilton, again, as I'm sure you'll remember, pitted on the lap to the grid at the restart to switch to dry tyres. But if we just take all of that out of it and look at the racing laps proper, it was really a one-stop with Ocon going from the mediums to the hards. The pit lane lost time is much less than last time out in France at around 19 seconds, and my random example of the week is from Daniel Ricciardo, whose stop in 2021 was 2.3 seconds for a total pit lane lost time of 21.6. And actually, definitely worth mentioning, it was at this track last year where Red Bull delivered the fastest pit stop of the season at just 1.88 seconds. Despite all that, though, track position is king at the Hungaroring, so it's likely to be a one-stop race if it stays dry. The safety car could also play its part on Sunday, but it doesn't tend to appear all that often. In fact, only 6 races in Hungary have featured a full safety car period, and Aston Martin point out that because we've mostly only seen early safety car interventions recently in Hungary, as well as the fact we've only seen the virtual safety car used in 2018, trying to incorporate a caution period into the race strategy is actually very difficult. As already touched on, the weather for this weekend does look a little bit mixed once again in Hungary, so we may see a rain-affected race for the 3rd year in a row. A shower, of course, hitting the track just before the start of the last 2 races at the circuit. Valtteri Bottas will be very nervous. Anyway, FP1 is expected to stay dry with highs of 32 degrees, and whilst it will stay warm for FP2, the risk of rain for that second session jumps to around 40%, so I guess a 60% chance it'll stay dry, but there you go. Saturday, though, is looking like a wet one at the moment with a 78% chance of rain for FP3 and 77% for qualifying. As for Sunday, it is more likely to stay dry with highs of 23 degrees for the start of the race, and the risk of rain, depending on which forecast you use, is only between 10 and 20%. As always, though, that is the forecast at time of recording, which for those interested is Wednesday afternoon, so that could easily all change by the time we get to the weekend. And your schedule for the weekend is, well, exactly the same as last time out, perhaps unsurprisingly. So FP1 will get the weekend going on Friday from 1 p.m. BST, and FP2 takes place from 4 p.m. later that afternoon. The final practice session is from midday on Saturday, with qualifying underway once again from 3 p.m. And it is lights out for the race on Sunday at 2 p.m. and once again that is in UK time. Now, before I do the flashback and make some predictions, let's have a look at some of the talking points ahead of this weekend's Hungarian Grand Prix. First up, Mattia Binotto has said that he sees no reason why Ferrari can't win the final 10 races of the season to try and save its hopes of winning a first driver's title since 2007 and a first constructor's title since 2008. He explained that he hasn't been keeping track of the gap to Max Verstappen and his focus is on trying to get the maximum results every race, adding the team has a good package and is targeting a 1-2 finish this weekend in Hungary. I've got to say, this is a big weekend for Ferrari. There is a hefty gap in the championship to Max Verstappen and Red Bull now, and if they are going to get themselves back into this, they really could do with taking the win. Is it a bit soon to call it a must-win? Maybe, because I know there are lots of races still to come, but they need to bounce back from France, and eventually those lots of races still to come are going to rapidly disappear. So perhaps it is a must-win. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think Ferrari have got to win this weekend to realistically keep their hopes of the championship alive, or do you think it's already over? Haas will finally bring its long-awaited update to the VF22 this weekend, but only on one car, with Kevin Magnussen being the first to run them. Why? Well, Gunther Steiner explained that due to the crashes suffered this season, the update was pushed back, plus they started on it late anyway, and there were delays in the development phase, hence why it was pushed back even further from France to Hungary, and all of that meant the team could only get one set of the upgrades out in time for this weekend, and so the decision was taken to give the updates to the driver highest in the standings. And if you're wondering how much of a boost it will give them, well, Gunther Steiner doesn't want to say, just in case, in his words, he jinxes it. Something else Steiner said that is interesting, and that's that Mick Schumacher will have to take a new power unit at some stage soon, which of course Kevin Magnussen, his teammate, did in France. And whilst Steiner said the aim is right now not to take it in Budapest, targeting Spa instead, that isn't 100% a given, and it will all depend on how the engine looks when it is checked over. So that's just something to keep an eye on this weekend. And finally, McLaren's James Key has admitted that the team is still suffering from what he described as the aftershock of the issues they struggled with in Bahrain. McLaren had brake problems in pre-season testing, and that rolled on into the first race weekend of the season as they were left really struggling for pace. That forced the team to find solutions which ultimately locked in their development cycle, which resulted in a series of spaced out larger updates, rather than bringing new parts to every race, leaving them out of sync with their rivals. Key also said that the team's update in France has given them a step forward, but although Lando Norris could not match his qualifying pace in the race, the package mostly delivered what was expected of it, and quote, "It has got a better feel to it." Positive stuff for McLaren. Key is also hoping that the team can exploit a bit more from the package going forward and aims to take another step this weekend, perhaps to where they were in Baku or Canada. Before I get on to my predictions, it's time to take a look at a classic race in Budapest. I was going to go with Damon Hill's fantastic yet unlucky drive in 1997, but given we've done the 90s for the last few previews, I'd figured we'd go with one from the 2000s, and if that's the case, there could only be one winner, really. So let's flash back to the 2006 Hungarian Grand Prix. Don't usually do this, but I've got to mention pre-race because it was all a little bit dramatic. Fernando Alonso was given a 1-second time penalty for each part of qualifying after he brake tested Robert Dornbos's Red Bull in practice after the Spaniard felt he had been impeded. He was also then handed another 1-second time penalty for overtaking under yellow flags in the same session. Jenson Button ended up with a 10-place grid drop for a new engine after his car went bang and caught fire in practice, an incident which naturally brought out the red flag. And under that red flag, Michael Schumacher overtook Alonso and Robert Kubica, who, by the way, was enjoying his first F1 race weekend after he replaced Jacques Villeneuve, and the Ferrari driver was therefore handed a 2-second penalty for that red flag infringement for each part of qualifying. Like I say, all a bit dramatic, but it did set us up for an all-time classic Grand Prix. So Kimi Raikkonen would start the race on pole with Schumacher 11th, Button 14th and Alonso 15th. It was a wet start as Raikkonen led the field away, with Schumacher and Alonso starting to work their way through the field, as was Button. What a first that from Alonso, by the way. The Spaniard also made a lovely move around the outside of a slow championship rival Schumacher at turn 5 on lap 4 for P4. Great overtake. I know Schumacher was struggling for pace. He was like 4 seconds off the pace of the leaders, something like that. But still, fantastic move from Fernando. Schumacher would later have to stop for repairs after contact with Giancarlo Fisichella, the Ferrari losing half of its front wing. Meanwhile, Raikkonen, I think, appeared to have the race under control early on, but once Alonso had made it to the front following the Finn's pit stop, the Spaniard was absolutely flying and built a pretty substantial lead. And on lap 26, it all got a little bit worse for Raikkonen as he came up to lap Liuzzi and was caught out by the Toro Rosso slowing, and Kimi hit the back of him in a huge crash which ended the McLaren's race. It looked good for Alonso, who began pulling away from second place Button at the safety car restart, but the Brit eventually started cutting the gap before pitting, but he only took on fuel and no new tyres. Alonso pitted a few laps later for dry tyres. However, on pit exit, it was quite clear all was not well, and the Renault was in the wall at turn 2 after a wheel nut fell off and he lost control of his car. That gave Button the lead and he pitted later for dries, maintaining his P1 where he would stay to take his first ever F1 victory, leading home Pedro de la Rosa in the McLaren and Nick Heidfeld in the BMW. Late contact with Heidfeld ended Schumacher's race, although he was still classified P8 due to the number of retirements, just 12 cars making it to the line, with Monteiro, Alba Speed and Sato 3, 4 and 5 laps down respectively, and Robert Kubica was unfortunately later disqualified as his car was found to be underweight post-race. That is only a brief summary of what was a chaotic and thrilling race, and I highly recommend giving it a watch, even if for no other reason than to hear Anthony Davidson's commentary after Button had crossed the line to take the win. Martin Brundle, what have you done? What a race. Right then, time for my predictions, and as always, please don't take these too seriously, they're just a little bit of fun, and if you do disagree with my picks, then you can let me know yours in the comment section down below. And based on my France picks, you absolutely should be disagreeing with me, wrong on everything, so let's just move on. Terrible week of predictions. Again. For this week, I was going to go all in on Ferrari, but then I saw the weather forecast for Saturday, and so that's thrown a little bit of a curveball into the mix, which could also be a lot of fun. As already mentioned, this is an important weekend for Ferrari, and Binotto is targeting that 1-2 on Sunday. And whilst Ferrari clearly has a very quick car, Red Bull also has a very quick car. Obvious statement alert, it's close at the front, and they do tend to go well in Budapest as well, do Red Bull, as do Mercedes, of course. So initially I was going with a Leclerc pole and win, but I'm wondering if the wet weather, if it comes, might swing qualifying a bit more Verstappen's way. Then again, Sainz did beat the Dutchman's pole at a wet Silverstone, so maybe he's in the mix as well. It's a tough one. But I'll stick with my original plan and say that Charles Leclerc takes pole from Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz, and stick with Leclerc for victory on Sunday as well. However, I'll put Sainz P2 and Verstappen P3. That will give Binotto his 1-2 finish. If you're wondering about Perez, by the way, his recent form in Hungary isn't all that great. It's not bad, just not all that great. And so I'm going to leave him off the podium for this one again. And I do think this is between Ferrari and Red Bull, which is why I've also left Mercedes out of it as well. I mean, obviously, you'd expect Mercedes to be in the mix for a podium if they can take advantage of a good strategy or perhaps some drama. So maybe we can call them podium outsiders. But my other podium outsiders, my podium very outsiders, is that a thing? It is now, are Alpine, because, well, they've had great form lately. And I don't know why, but I just feel like Fernando Alonso is due a mega result. It feels like something is brewing with him. Gotta be said though, the Enstone team does have a mixed bag of results in Budapest, so maybe that's a little bit ambitious. Then again, they did win last year, so you never know. Which I guess could also go for Checo. Maybe this is the year he turns that form around. Alpine, by the way, also appear to have the 4th fastest car out there at the moment, so I'm feeling good about them, although you can never rule out McLaren and Lando Norris if we do get a little bit of drama to capitalise on. As for some bolder predictions, if we get a wet race and some drama, I'm going to say that Lewis Hamilton will take his first win of the season and Alonso joins him on the podium. I am going to jinx Haas and say that K-Mag, drama or not, makes the top 6. And because he has actually got some really strong form in Hungary, disqualification aside, last year he scored at every race since 2010, I'm going with a points finish for Sebastian Vettel and I'm going to say P7. Although it would be nice, again, if it's a bit of a chaotic Grand Prix, to see a podium of Hamilton, Alonso and Vettel in any order. What a race that would be. But anyway, that is it for the Hungarian Grand Prix preview then. But don't forget to let me know your thoughts and your predictions ahead of the weekend in the comment section down below. Now, I will be back live on Sunday with the usual reaction stream, and for those who missed it last Sunday, I will be coming back to YouTube full-time very, very soon, so you've not got to wait till Belgium for another predictions video or a preview video or whatever. There'll be content out in August, don't worry. If you were worrying, I'm sure many of you weren't. In the meantime, though, if you did enjoy this one, then please do leave a like, because it really does help the channel out, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos or streams. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.